Yeah, it's, thank you, Mark. No, I think that's okay. Thank you all for coming to the May 2026 Community Board 2 of Manhattan Parks and Waterfront Committee meeting. My name is Rich Cacapolo. I'm the chair of the meeting. Before we get going, let me have everyone introduce themselves. Members of the committee, both, let's start down on that end. We have a microphone, please.
Check. I'm Eddie Siegel, member of the committee.
I'm Shirley Secunda, member of the committee.
William Benish, member of the committee.
Chris Dignas, member of the committee.
Valerie Della Rosa, Chair of Manhattan Community Board 2.
Susanna Aaron, Vice Chair of the Parks Committee.
Ben Listman, committee member.
Frederica Siegel.
Nina Chen.
Sharon Willems, public member, Parks Committee.
Nina's new member, she fell for the old trick that new members are supposed to bring cookies. So it was a joke, but she did it. Yeah, thank you. A few other people, let me highlight. Bo, just introduce yourself. Just other members of the community board. And Carter's here. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Any elected officials here? I can't see, no. Anybody else that wants to highlight who they are? Let me point out Will. I'll introduce you later. Will's here. Okay, let's get started. We have one topic today. It's, come on in, just take a seat. We have it's a discussion about the installation of gates at Washington Square Park entrances to replace the police barricades. That's the title that we had in the calendar. And I want to clarify that this is very much a discussion. This is not a review of a proposal. I saw a headline today on something that said it was a push to install gates at Washington Square Park to enforce midnight curfew sparks controversy. There's no push. I honestly don't know if there's any controversy. That's why we're here. We're here to discuss it. It's a topic that's been bubbling around for 20 years, and we'll get a little background on that. And in recent months, I think it's picked up a bit more. As I said again, there's no proposal to consider. This is just an opportunity for the community to weigh in, and that's why we're here today. We want to elicit opinions on this topic, and more specifically on a few points below it. First off, whether the community wants the Community Board 2 to take a position on the implementation of gates at the 9 entrances of Washington Square Park. We've looked back at resolutions. I'll highlight them during the course of the conversation. As I said, this goes back to when the park was redesigned or changed in 2005. Second point is, if we all believe the park should be closed more effectively, and let me just point out for those who don't know, the park is closed at midnight each night, and that's done in a way that is where these French barricades, which are stored by the gates, are pulled across and they're chained together, but people walk around them. We wanted to see if the park should be closed more effectively, and could it be done in a way that's also aesthetically more pleasing than the barricades, which again are the current mechanism. And 3, if so, just to lay out the process, if we hear from the community and the community board decides that we should move to the next step would be for us to ask the Parks Department via a resolution to officially and formally consider how that might be done and how it would be funded. And I think it's a very critical thing to point out. If the community wants to ask Parks to consider implementation and the process and the design of gates, the review of the aesthetics and any proposed gates would not fall to this committee, would actually go to our sister committee, CB2 Landmarks, since Washington Square Park is in a historic district. So I also think we should, okay, so that's sort of the setup. We don't have usually at these meetings, if you don't come, we usually have cookies. No, that's just, we rarely have cookies. No, usually there's a presentation by somebody who wants to get, approval of something. That's not the case in this one. This is more of a discussion, but for context, I asked George Vilonikis, I'll ask George to introduce himself. I would not do his introduction properly. George will give his history. George is here as a member of the community. He is not a Parks Committee member. He's not paid by the city. I've asked him, he looks young, but he was here in 2005 and he was in a position, he looks younger every time I see him. So George, if you wouldn't mind giving us the history, as only you can do. And everybody who wants to speak will get a chance to speak.
I'm George Vilonicus. I am a resident of Greenwich Village. I live on 11th Street, and I use the park very often. And I designed the park back in the turn of the century, around 2001. Around 2004, we met with the community board, and we had a whole proposal for Washington Square Park. That was the entire reconstruction. That was a major change. And part of the plans of Washington Square Park were looking at layers of history. And the history was really very critical from what it was from a green space, and then what happened in 1870 was half of it became a roadbed. Now, prior to a roadbed, from about 1820 till about 1870, that's 50 plus years, there was a fence around Washington Square Park, and it's very well documented. And the replication of the fence that you see today is a replication of what those photographs did show. The differences are that it's much lower in scale, but the composition and the aesthetics of that detail is really a replica of what was created today in the park that we see today. In addition, what we did is that we created the gates that were also in those images, again, reduced to scale. And those presentations were done in 2005 to Community Board 2. But it was just not the gates and the fences. It was about the raising of the plaza, the shifting of the fountain, relocation of dog runs, adding 28% more green to the park, creating new kind of different types of pedestrian walkways, and again, the new comfort stations that we have in the park and the field office. Fast forward, during those meetings, Community Board 2 did approve the plans for the gates that were in those contract drawings that went to LPC. So it was the entire perimeter fence and gates. A day before that meeting at LPC, my commissioner had it removed. Not the fence itself, but the gates were removed because there was just so much controversy with the entire park, and we kind of thought, let's just take the gates out now because the fountain was a huge issue, the dog runs were an issue, everything became an issue in Washington Square Park. Anything that was a change in Washington Square Park became controversial. So then the gates were removed. But again, just to clarify it, the gates were approved by Community Board 2 during the process. Fast forward, then 2006 or 2007, I think the approvals of Washington Square Park then were declined. There was a big change in Community Board 2. And then we had lawsuits, of course, and then we proceeded with the reconstruction, I think 2007. And there were 3 phases that were done in the park. So fast forward years later, my commissioner, Adrian Benepe at the time, felt the park was showing some type of decline because it really wasn't maintained. The horticulture wasn't watered. We didn't have any nonprofit group at that moment and didn't have the staff in New York City Parks to maintain what we had. And so then I said yes to it, and I became the parks administrator. And that was a hard process too, because it was a learning experience on how the park is managed and how the horticulture is, how it can survive, and the cleaning and the safety of Washington Square Park. And then I met with NYPD multiple times. I wish they would be here today because they were very open to putting some type of enclosure. And that's when they started saying, okay, we're doing police barricades. They became gates. And those gates now probably lasted for 2 decades. And the gates are, as you can see them in the park today, they're chained against the ornate posts that are the entrance posts that should take on attractive gates. So I think today is not about gates in Washington Square Park, because the park is locked. It's just not properly locked. It's very hard for anyone from the Parks Department or anyone from NYPD to properly lock those portions of those entrances. They're very flimsy, they're unattractive, and we have to realize that Washington Square Park, not that it's just the most iconic urban spaces probably in the world per square foot on how usable it is, but every entrance is a park experience. And when you look at the ugly chains, it's not a really good image of what New York City should be, including police barricades. And so my recommendation is that I would hope that Community Board too, and the public would now say now it's time to replace the unattractive police barricades with appropriate gates that really represent the history of that park, which it did have at one time for 50 plus years, that it was locked. Now, there is one huge problem at the arch, and I've spoken to many people about this also. In our proposals, those are police barricades too, and you can probably see them. They're kind of folded and like accordion, like an accordion in a way. And again, that can be something in the future that maybe this community board should look at, making those more attractive, that can match the fence, that aren't just folded and opened as we have today. So the entire plaza, which is 100 feet from ornate entrance post to entrance post, can be very open. So the whole intent is to kind of keep it extremely open, not like that it's locked, but only locked when the curfew hours are there, so the park is protected. And the other issue that I had, and I really like to say this, I'm not sure how it is with William these days, but every morning I'd come back to the park as the administrator, and the fountain was filled with debris. There were just needles everywhere, and there was just debris everywhere in that park because the trash bins were so crowded. And at that moment, when the park was potentially locked, people still would break open the park, and it was just really not a good park to maintain early morning hours with the staff. I just wanted to kind of make that clear that it's not an easy space to maintain because it is a heavily used space. It's not a park you transfer. So it's really a destination. And you have tens of thousands of people that use that park daily for the months of May until probably early fall. So
George, can I ask you to
share
stop?
that with you?
Yeah. Can I should have done it myself. Can you just remind everyone what role you had back then? And I just want to clarify again, you're not a representative.
No, I'm not a representative. I'm a landscape architect. I'm not sure how many parks is it in Greenwich Village. I think there are 14 parks. Washington Square Park is the largest of them all. Many of you probably use many of them, like Abington Square, Father GMO, and there are many others that I can name. But I'm a neighbor. I'm a parkie. I care about our public open spaces, and I really think that we really need to be more considerate and more respectable to these spaces. Like our parks need to be locked. And I'll give you examples. These are historic squares. They were all built around 1820 or so. Tompkins Square was one of them that has gates around it. Madison Square Park was built at the same time, 1820s, that has gates around it. City Hall Park has gates around it. There's nothing wrong with gates. All our parks around the world are locked at night because landscapes are very sensitive. Anyone who has a garden knows that it has to be protected. So it's really protecting our investment.
Can you just say what was your role in 2004, 2005?
My role in 2000, when I designed the park, my role is I worked in Parks Department, the Capital Division, and I designed the park. And I don't know when I became the park administrator. I believe it was probably, I don't know what year was that. A few years before COVID.
No.
Around 3 or 4 years before COVID.
Okay, yeah, 2017, 18, 20. Yeah, okay.
Because right before COVID, I retired from government and I moved on.
If we can pause you there, I wanted to ask the members of the committee, especially those who haven't been around that long, if you have any questions for George, just from the context of the history and his. Yeah, just introduce yourself one more time.
Yes, again, hi, it's William Benish, committee member. So you mentioned that there were gates previously in the park's history. When exactly were those removed and what was the reasoning behind the removal?
Yeah, the removal was in 1870 approximately. The park was a green park from 1820 to 1870, and then a roadbed was installed. So more than 50% of the park became hardscaped. So Fifth Avenue came through Washington Square Park at that moment, and that's why the gates were removed and the fences were removed. So that just kind of clarifies what had happened. That was during a time period where, there was major change, actually not a very good change to Washington Square Park, where the park was really actually taken away from the public.
That's when the Fifth Avenue bus used to turn around.
Correct.
Right?
And they went to LaGuardia, they went to Sullivan Street and Thompson Street. Then by 1930, the Sullivan Street entrance was kind of closed, it became greener. And that paved area, then traffic stopped, I think in 1959 or 1960 or so, maybe a little bit later than that. And then in 1969, the redesign took the roadbed out. So it went through a whole series of change.
How do you envision a gate around the arch?
Not a gate around the arch, it'd be an accordion fence. So it'd be something very low that just kind of folds like the police barricades do. But that looks like the fence. So it's nice, it's a nice design. It's not like a police barricade. Yes, in the presentation in 2005, the images were shown, of course, very large. And if you look at those drawings, I believe Parks may have them. Those drawings did show the details of those gates.
Yeah, Nina Chen, committee member. So for the, could you just clarify, confirm that all parks in New York City closes? This is not a negotiation that whether
I'm
we
not
can
a
keep-
parks person to answer that, but I would say the majority of New York City parks are closed, that are green.
All parks have operating hours, to answer the question succinctly. They might, oh, sorry, my name is Will Morrison. I'm the current administrator of Washington Square Park and the executive director of the Washington Square Park Conservancy.
Whoever's phone is ringing, do you mind stopping that? Okay, just so everybody understands the run of show, we're going to start with questions from the committee and then from our board. It doesn't look like it because they're sitting there, but both Sharon and Elizabeth are on our committee, and then we'll open it up to the public, so everyone will have a chance.
Can anyone tell us what percentage of parks are locked, not closed, but locked?
I'd have to get back to you. That's a piece of data I don't know off the top of my head.
I wish we had that information.
Well, let's just look at Greenwich Village at this moment. Jackson Square is locked, Abington Square is locked, Father Demo's locked, the Minetas are locked, Churchill's locked. St. Vincent's, I'm not sure that's a park. Is that, that's locked.
Right.
That one's a locked park. I believe those are all locked. And the playgrounds are locked also.
Hi, Elizabeth Gilmore, public member. It's nice to see you all in person. I haven't been here in person in a long time. I forgot what I was going to say.
That's right.
So looking back through the historical, I'm a board member, and I was looking back through the history. So the reason the gates were removed, I think by the Parks Department, but from the minutes of our meetings, it was because Councilmember Gerson was engaged in negotiation in 2005. In September of 2005, he reported back to our board on a whole list of things that we're negotiating through the controversy, even though the board had already passed its resolution. And as a part of that, in September, he mentions that the gates, removing the gates, and then there's no more mention of the gates after that. And there was a resolution which we passed the following month in October, and it addressed the height of the fence, which was also very controversial. There's an exact measurement for it. People didn't want the fence to be too high along, just backing up what George had said with that. So there was an intervening point that I don't think the board weighed in on. It was actually handled outside of the board between the speaker and our council member at that time, just by way of background of how that evolved.
As I understand it, Washington Square Park is now closed but not locked. And one of the big questions always for me in New York City is enforcement. Is the closedness enforced? I guess you're not.
Yeah, the closure is enforced every evening. As George mentioned, NYPD every evening closes the park and locks it in conjunction with parks enforcement, and those existing French barricades stay locked from midnight until 6 a.m. when maintenance arrives in the morning to open them up to get the trash out that's left overnight.
Go on to talk obviously the 100 feet around the arch is not locked, and explain how people can move the barricades and then.
Sure. So it is actually locked. Because all those NYPD barricades interlock. Like if anyone's ever been to a concert or a parade, on the route, you'll see that the barricades can be locked. So if they're in a straight line, it's impossible to open them. However, so that's what happens at the Arch every night. That said, on a 100-foot stretch of barricades, if you get enough people to, move it, you can move them and undo them. So, that is a possibility. But every night, that stack of barricades is dragged out and locked by NYPD and Parks Enforcement.
And if someone's from the precinct, please jump in. But correct me if I'm wrong. Do the police enter the park during the night and approach people who've entered the park and tell them, hey, it's locked, please get out?
I don't want to speak for NYPD. I don't think that's my place, but I can say from a Parks Enforcement perspective, when there are Parks Enforcement officers on an overnight tour, which does occasionally happen, they are going into the park, seeing who's there, and asking folks to leave if they're there.
So I have a question just of clarification. So just to be clear, the park has a rule that it gets closed every night. That already exists. At midnight?
Correct.
Okay. And the park already has some sort of barrier at the entrances. That already exists. And those barriers are locked. That already exists.
Correct.
Is that right? So I just to be clear, I think that this conversation tonight is whether to alter, it's not whether to have a gate or not, it's whether to alter it into a design that has been approved by the Landmarks Committee. Is that framed right or not?
I think that's a fair assessment
Okay.
of the situation. The police barricades are there. They're what we use. They're the tools we have available at this point to enforce the closing hours of the park, and that's what's done.
Thank you.
To be clear, though, we're not talking about something that's already been approved, because it would have to go back to landmarks. So just so that's clear.
Right.
That there's not that it infers that there's some sort of proposed design that we're talking about, and we're not.
Got
Correct.
There's no proposed design. Sometimes we'll refer, there were designs done in 2005 that were proposed, yeah. But gate technology may have improved dramatically in the last 20 years. Or they may not be cost prohibitive or whatever. So again, if we think that it would be good to have gates, then again, the process is we go to parks and say, what do you propose? And then they propose, and then it goes to landmarks for aesthetics.
You're absolutely right.
That's what I wanted to confirm, that we already have closure, so to speak. We're just talking about changing the style. And a style would have to be approved by landmarks.
Any other questions from committee members or community board 2 members? Carter, you can get that one.
So is this working? I can't tell if it's working. Is it working? Yes, maybe. So wired.
Yeah, I can give you this one if you want.
Sorry. Thank you for the microphone. So I was the board chair during COVID, and this really evolved this conversation because with the changes of what was happening in the park and the city at the time, I was constantly asked in every single meeting by the police department, by the parks department, everybody, why do we still have all these police gates up in the park when we're trying to change the narrative of what's happening? And so that really began a long conversation that's led to this meeting tonight, because nobody really wanted to start the conversation again, but I think it's time to have that conversation again, because the symbolism of having the park locked up and chained up with police barriers, as opposed to just all the other calm parks that close normally at a time in a very procedural method that's not problematic, that's really the genesis of where this is. And so this is, if you talk to anybody at the police meetings, the parks department, everybody said, why don't we have these? Why can't even the gates were designed originally that they could close halfway to just transmit to people, hey, the park's closing soon, you can leave, and not have police cars driving around with their lights on and all of this, a whole other situation. And I think that is an evolution of where we are today. In the past, controversy, what George mentioned, every single item in the park was litigated at length. And I think, now we have a park that's decade and a half old, and I think that it's used a little differently. Evolution is, the uses, and people would like a nice park that's clean in the morning. What we hear from a lot of people who go to use the park in the morning is what a mess it is, and that's not a very comfortable environment. And so there's a lot of other issues, but I think it's right to have the conversation. But it's an evolution that really happened in the last 5 years, where it really came up a lot more in so many meetings, and I don't recall it coming up prior to that as much.
Let's have the conversation. We have 3 people that filled out speaker cards requests, but we'll let everyone speak. It's a small group. But Will, do you want to say anything before, or just answer questions? Or
I'm here to listen,
okay.
and I can hand this mic off to whoever.
Okay, and yeah, you can. Let's limit it to a couple minutes. Let me just point out the filming. All of our meetings are filmed and are available on YouTube. Millions of views. So yeah, they go viral if people do things. Yeah. So there's also, can you guys tell us where you're from if you're not filming for that purpose? Channel 5. New York 1, okay. Right. And CBS, thanks.
Pix 11,
Wow.
CBS, NBC. Thank you.
Wow.
And then WABC is on the Zoom, and I think WABC is in the room also.
You guys know the Knicks are playing tonight,
Yes.
right? All right, good. All right. So, yeah, there are other events. Again, we'll call on these people first, and then we'll let anyone speak who wants to speak. Why don't you go?
Sure, and then after this, we can invite people on the Zoom to raise their hands, right? Well, we're going to invite people in the room and on Zoom to raise their hands, and we'll try to get to everybody.
You can ask questions, you can give opinions, and we'll go back if...
But yeah, and we'll keep it short, though. We'll keep it within 2 minutes, because if there are a lot of people talking, it gets too long. So the first person on the list, I'll name all 3, Morel Myers, and then Erica Sumner. Oh, no, neither. Fact-finding. Okay, Erica Sumner, I don't think has a comment about the gates. You do. Okay, so there you go. Oh, okay, so you have a question. Okay, so we'll first go to Morel Myers, then Erica Sumner, and then David Sifford. And I'll ask you guys to just come up. So Morel, there you go. And Erica, you can go up after her. And David Sifford, you can go after her. And we'll have a 2-minute, are you keeping a timer or do you? Okay, Will is gonna keep the timer, just to keep you all honest.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morel. I'm an artist in Woodside, Queens.
Why is it so quiet? Is it on?
Hello? Yeah. Sorry, All right. Hi, I'm Morel. I'm an artist from Woodside. I do object to the comparison of locking the gates, the barricades versus the permanent infrastructure of fencing. This is a huge deal. We obviously have press here, and it's not a small change. This is a permanent infrastructure development to the park that will affect future generations, particularly millennials and Gen Z, who will have these changes for the rest of their lives, okay? The rest of their lives. This is a big change. It needs to be taken seriously, and we know that fencing goes against the idea of a public, accessible area. This is a massive park with a massive monument that is world-renowned. I enjoy traveling other similar parks in Europe where you can walk at all hours of the night. The reason those places are unsafe is because we don't invest in the public in this country. The reason these places are unsafe is because we don't have care infrastructure. Fences are not care infrastructure. It's emotional because I'm tired of seeing this in my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, Morel. What? Erica?
Good evening. My name is Erica Sumner, and I am president of the Washington Square Association. We really do appreciate Parks and Waterfront paying attention to this issue. As the city's oldest neighborhood and civic organization, now in our 120th year, we have been deeply involved in this park stewardship at every level, from helping establish the midnight closing policy to playing a hands-on role in the arch restoration and park reconstruction. We've also helped sustain the park's cultural life, hosting the holiday tree and caroling under the arch for over a century, and founding the Washington Square Music Festival. I'm on my tippy toes. Oh, thank you. Much appreciated. More recently, we did take a leadership role on public safety during the period when the park faced an open drug market. We came before CB2 and worked with you to advance a resolution to address those conditions. And that history is not just legacy, it's institutional memory. We've seen firsthand how any changes to how the park is accessed or enclosed have always required robust and often hard-fought community input. That process is part of what's preserved the park's character as an open, iconic civic space. And to be clear, we are not anti-gate. We do believe that they should find more effective ways to support the NYPD in communicating and closing the park. But we are firmly pro-community input. As part of our outreach, we've been trying to find out information. We reached out to Will Morrison, who indicated that neither the Parks Department nor the Conservancy are involved, and that he wasn't aware of the rationale for advancing at this time. And at the same time, we've heard a range of other, sometimes conflicting information. Everything from this being described
Erica,
as a
your
general...
time. Take a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Take a couple more beats.
Okay.
Because your time is up.
We've heard this being described as a general discussion, to having advancing a resolution, to even reports that the gates may have already been made. And I raise that not to validate any one claim, but to underscore the level of confusion in the community. And given that, we respectfully ask that we respond to a plan, not a concept of gating the park. We want figures. We want a design plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last person who signed up is David Siffert.
Thank you. My name is David Sifford. I've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. I work at NYU Law School. I'm also running for state assembly in
If
the
we
neighborhood.
could, again, there's no electioneering at a community board meeting, so if you could just cut that.
Yeah.
The way I feel about Washington Square Park, I think, is how a lot of people in this community feel about Washington Square Park, which is it's a venue for openness and inclusion where all sorts of people can gather in a way that feels free and genuinely themselves. I hear that the current system with the barricades is not perfectly conducive to that. I'm skeptical of the idea that large-scale permanent fencing and gates is going to make that better. We don't have a concrete proposal here. I am excited about the idea that we are being asked to engage in this discussion. But I think we're starting off on the wrong foot with a proposal that feels like something that's more exclusionary than what we currently have, at least with the information we've currently been given. So I think we've proven over the last few months, especially, that we can keep this park safe without massive permanent exclusionary infrastructure. And I'm hopeful that going forward we can enter into dialogue about how to design a park that's as open and inclusive as possible.
Thank you.
Let me just... I would like to add, one of the reasons we thought it was worthwhile to bring this topic up in our committee was to keep what I think most people agree is the really positive momentum that has been initiated from the important and successful effort by the Parks Committee and the police and whoever else was involved to change the situation in the northwest corner of the square. So there's, Yeah, there were other people involved. I think that's, if you haven't been there in a while, it's transformed. There's programming that's being done there now. I urge you to go anytime up until midnight. Next, anybody? What? No, not yet. If there anybody else in the room, and then we'll get to Zoom. If anyone else would like to speak, yeah, let's go with Toby. Please introduce yourself.
You'll need to go over to the microphone.
Toby.
I know.
I want everyone to see the short. Yeah.
I don't have to have a light in my eye. Okay. Hi, everybody. So me and the park go way back. I actually grew up playing there with the father of David Siffert, John Siffert, who I went to school with, and also with Chris and Kerry Hayes, who were the sons of Shirley Hayes, who really we owe the park to, because she's the person who got the park out of the park, cars out of the park, basically single-handedly, or with the community support. I was probably either chair of the community board 2 or vice chair of the community board 2 when we approved the fence originally, and we approved the design of the park. So I guess I could kind of say I'm on the fence. Somebody had to say that. I don't like the idea of the swinging gates. And I don't like them because I think that open or closed, they transmit, they more than keep people out, they transmit a message. I think that the barricades have to go. I think they're really, really ugly. They're really hard for the Parks Department and the police to handle, and they don't work. What I've said for quite a while, and I'm not sure it's the right solution either, I think is basically a slack chain going across the entrances, and we can't say they're ugly because they are on almost every interior fence in the park. That's what we have around the lawn areas. Now, do they work? No. People step over them. And I think that people also step over accordion gates at the front of the park. I really one thing I think we have in our favor for not doing a more secure solution now is the park has gotten so much better, and I think that whatever it is, whether it's the growing experience of the park staff or change in behavior of people, the park is looking great. And I go through the park a lot in the morning, and I really don't experience this situation of a disaster out there. It's clearly there were a lot of people there at night, but it wasn't a disaster. And I also go through a lot at night, and I'm kind of an old guy, and sometimes I feel threatened just by people walking down the street too fast, but I don't feel threatened in the park. And I think that one mistake we shouldn't make is to think that parks get better when there's fewer people in them. Parks get better when there's more people in them. So I'm on the fence, but I don't think it should be gates. If it's going to be something, it should be something that's more park-friendly, people-friendly than gates. Thanks. I think before that.
Hello, my name is Brian Meister. I have lived in Washington Square since 1967. And since 1970, I have lived right on the northeast corner of Washington Square Park. I love the park. I look at it, I can see it from my apartment. I use it every day. I begin every day right after my coffee. I have a walk around the perimeter of the park, and then I have a walk around the interior perimeter, and then a walk around the fountain. And I'm a little bit impatient with some of the discussions about the police barriers. Here are some photographs I have taken. Please pass them around. That's what the police barriers often look like. And the gentleman who just spoke said he doesn't believe that real, proper gates would send an appropriate message. I think the message that those gates would send is, this park is to be respected. So I'm all in favor of attractive, proper, formal gates. This is what I saw in the park just the other morning. It was about 8:30 in the morning, and I crossed through the park to go to the hardware store on 3rd Street, and there was somebody sound asleep on a mattress in the center area of the park. And here's just another random gentleman asleep on a bench. I find it very dispiriting. I find it a little bit disgusting, but dispiriting that at 8:30 in the morning, I have to encounter this. I love the park. I've worked hard all of my life so that I can afford to live on the park. And it distresses me to see it ill-used.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming and thanks for speaking. Just to clarify, the park opens at 6 a.m., so if at 8:30, I guess you didn't say when the person entered, I'm not sure you know, but yeah, right, okay.
We were in contact that morning, and we don't know when he entered, but yeah, he was there at 8:30.
Anybody else like to speak? Thank you for coming, Brian.
Do you want to go to people on the
Yeah, sure. Well, people are deciding whether they want to speak. Who's on Zoom?
Well, I have.
Please raise your hand
Microphone.
if you're on Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand on the Zoom. Right now, we have Jeffrey Rowland and Eve Silber. Mark will promote you.
Let's go with Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, you need to accept the promotion, and then we have, Vanessa Rose and Catherine Swan after Eve. Okay, so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see you too, Jeffrey.
This is a bad idea that keeps resurfacing. Notwithstanding any anecdotal evidence of bad behavior, it is a bad policy to try to codify something that will prevent any bad behavior and affect then the entire community. Most people respect the park. Most people behave at the park. Most people do not go in after the hours that they're not allowed to. And to put on something as permanent as a fixed gate is, I agree with Toby, a bad idea. It affects the attitude. It makes the park more private, as if it's owned only by the people who live around its edge, or NYU. And so this has been struck down many times before, and I've lived here since 1966, I think. And I just think it's a really bad idea. In addition, I'll tell you that Mitchell Silver, commissioner of the parks from about 2014 to 2021, something like that, made a proposal of open parks where they went out of their way to remove gates and at entrances and open parks. To change that kind of policy now is a bad idea, and I'd like to see it treated as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, can I ask you a question?
You can.
And can you explain to people your role at LaGuardia?
I'm a founding member of LaGuardia Corner Gardens, and yes, we have a gate, and yes, we do keep the gate locked. It is a flower garden, and largely, and therefore much more vulnerable to bad behavior in the park. We still, in fact, even though we are locked, we still find people sometimes sleeping in there and bathing in there, even when it's locked. But most of the time during the day, we have it open all the time because ultimately Mitchell Silver was right. This is a better policy. Allow use, make it everybody's, and hope that we can, by good example, encourage good behavior.
Okay. What did you understand, or could you envision Toby's proposal of a chain with a sign?
I could live with a black chain going across and expecting that people would understand that better as a little sign that says park is closed, okay. You will still have people who will climb the fence and do what they want. That's not going to change. Anecdotal evidence is not going to make that go away. You're going to find somebody in the park when you don't want to. I don't think that means you should make a decision that affects everybody else.
Okay, thanks. No, I respect your opinion, so I really wanted to get your thoughts on Toby's idea.
Thank you.
The next person is Eve Silber. Eve, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. My name's Eve Silber, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 39 years over on Sheridan Square. So I remember when the park was open 24/7. And I guess part of us, maybe a lot of us, are hoping one day that will return. And these gates kind of indicate an end to that imagination. There was a hard fight to resist that. And I'm just going to mention Mayor Vishner and others who fought very hard to keep the park as it was originally intended to be a public space. And that's what this is always about, public space. We are losing it with every municipal adjustment that allows for a restaurant to take over what used to be our public space. We are losing public space. So for this to be proceeding in a way that has created so much confusion in that we're not given costs or designs or an official proposal, it reminds me of all the other public space we have lost in a similar way here. It's about public space. The people who use our parks in public are the public. We don't have a right to decide who deserves to be in a park or not be in a park. They are the public, and if the public is a reflection of the issues in our society, then those should be seen and visible for everybody to know we have problems to address in our world, and you can see them in our parks.
I just want to make sure I understand. To summarize, are you saying that you would like to see a formal, or you'd like to see a proposal from the Parks Department?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I was alerted to this meeting on the basis that there's no proposal, there's no design, that this was just going to be voted on without any of those things, and that is not normal. So it reminds me of a lot of other things that aren't normal that are happening. So I'm here to say, let's be normal in how we proceed. Let's be transparent. Let's be clear to the public, because something else is feeling, we are feeling differently about how this is proceeding.
So can I ask you now, after the introduction and the conversation, do you feel that it's more normal, the process we've described? The fact that, as I've explained, there is no proposal, that we're here to have a conversation, a discussion. I want to make sure that the process is, that you're saying you are supportive of the process to, if in fact gates are to be considered, that a real proposal with costs and design would be brought to the community?
I'm still imagining a world where we could have that park 24/7. So I'm saying, if you're going to proceed this way, I'm sorry I missed the first 5 minutes of the meeting. So if something is different than what was addressed in the call to appear at this meeting, then are you not planning to take a vote tonight? Will there be a proposal, design, and cost explained to the public?
Let me say again, it's critical to point out that the purpose of the discussion was to get feedback from the community as to whether or not they want to ask the Parks Department to consider the implementation and the process and the design of gates, and as the costs and how, what they would look like, and propose options, et cetera. There's no That was just a question of whether the community board should make that request of the Parks Department. And after the Parks, if the Parks Department would say, here's a proposal and here's the cost, or the Parks Department might say, we don't have the funds, or the Parks Department might say, you know, here's a design, and at that point, then the Landmarks Commission has to weigh in on the aesthetics of it. So that's the process.
Okay, that sounds like a legitimate process, but I'm going to align myself with Jeffrey to say that I imagine a world where parks are open for the public as designed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have is Vanessa Rose. Vanessa, and Mark, could you also promote Catherine Swan? Oh, okay. All right. So, Catherine, you have your hand raised. If you want, you can lower it. Or if not, we will promote you. You can accept the promotion. And otherwise, we have Vanessa Rose. Vanessa, you can unmute yourself and speak when you're ready.
Okay, hello, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. First and foremost, good afternoon to everyone. And my name is Vanessa Rose. I've been going to this park for many, many, many years. This park represents for many New Yorkers freedom of expression, and it brings together different individuals in unity and peace. Bringing gates, I believe, sends the wrong message to the public, to the main users of this park. To all the younger generations, this makes us feel enclosed and restricted and changes the experience of what it is to be in this park. I believe we need to focus on making New Yorkers feel welcomed to a park that us, the taxpayers, are paying for. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands on. Oh, okay.
Coral is there.
Great.
Coral, can you hear us?
Oh, and I also
Yes.
see.
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. Which of you want to go first?
Why don't you go ahead, Coral?
Yeah, Coral's up.
Coral was a public member of this committee, and then we Amy Wachtel.
I just don't find this all that controversial. I think it's a wonderful idea to revisit the historical design of the park in respect to the way Washington Square Park has historically been represented to the community and clearly didn't have an issue. I think it would be interesting to see what Landmarks could try to design along with those that have historically been involved. I don't think people are going to be kept out per se. Most of our parks are gated, whether it's Vesuvio, DeSalvio, I mean, I can't even think, I mean, pretty much all of them are gated. It's not really an issue. And I do, for those that are mentioning that there has been a significant decline in issues at the park, I would credit the NYPD for that. Whether we have gates or not, if it lessens the burden for them of having to put out barriers and remove them every day, I think we should be willing to at least consider options that would allow resources to be allocated more efficiently for our community. So I think we should listen and perhaps consider what designs might be available. I just don't find this that controversial.
Thanks, Coral.
Yes, we identified Coral as a public member of the committee. And now online we have Catherine Swan.
Hi. Hi there. I don't know if I have my video on or not, but anyway, so I'm appreciative of all the comments. Actually, I'm really appreciative. I've been writing the Washington Square Park blog for 18 years and seen kind of middling, sometimes, conversation around different issues around Washington Square Park. So I'm very encouraged that so many people have come to speak out about this. And gates, of course, have been raised at Washington Square Park when the redesign was being proposed. And, at 2016, I just reposted something at my blog where Toby Bergman was, in favor of different things and whatever. I just thought this was a very unusual way this was presented. Like, in a way, it was really nice that you involved the community, but I didn't really understand why George Vilonicus was sort of the key person, like, presenting this. But anyway, if this is the way you want to do things, where you involve the community first and then come at a later date with things, I'm not opposed to that. But I do feel like I felt a little conflicted about the person who said that he was dispirited by entering the park with a guy sleeping on the mattress. That person does not want to be sleeping on a mattress. That person is having a hard time. And as Eve Silver said, it reflects what's going on in our society. And it may be considered a victory what happened in the Northwest corner, getting rid of all those people, but it just, those are people having hard times. And and Washington Square Park is about inclusive, and there's a little bohemian spirit and all that. And you can't just like block people away because you don't want to see them. I mean, I just don't think that's fair. And Washington Square Park is not about that. So I appreciate you bringing this up. I just don't think gates are appropriate for the park.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
I just want to see, panelists, Catherine, Amy Wachtel. Oh, Amy Wachtel.
Yeah, you said Amy wanted to speak.
Amy Wachtel.
And then I'm going to go back and allow anybody on the committee to comment, of course, and then we'll go to business session.
Hi. So thank you, everyone. I mean, this is a healthy conversation, and respectful. And I live on Carmine Street, maybe 40 years, I've lost track. I consider the park my backyard. That's when we talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that's my backyard. And I guess similarly, I feel as if it is unfortunate that X amount of people, use it overnight and they don't have anywhere else to go. So I'm wondering where we think they'll go if we lock them out with this gate and if they don't try to get in. Did you want them back on Washington, Place or Waverly? Like, where do you think these people who go in the park are going to go? So I feel like it could just be taking a population, which a number of people have pointed out, just really don't have options. And you may actually be having a worse situation. At least they're contained in the park. And as far as like behavior, I find aspects of the park during the day disgusting. There can be tons of people in the fountain, in the water, with their dogs, with their cigarettes. I don't like that. I don't know if anyone else does. There used to be signs about certain rules. I don't think they're there anymore. So I just, I don't know. I understand not wanting the overnight and then waking up in the morning and finding terrible things. But there has been that amazing cleanup on the Northwest corner. And I guess I'm just saying, I don't think I would want gates. And thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for speaking.
I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. Thanks to all of you. Do you want to call?
Anyone else in the room that would like to comment, or we can comment and we can open it up to questions. Anybody here? There is one point I'll make. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're still in public session.
Yeah, so I feel like having these discussions kind of in a vacuum. So maybe this is a question. Sorry, what's your name again?
My name is Will.
Yeah, Will. In terms of, it would be helpful to know how much. Well, I'm not saying you need to come up with number now, but what it costs to like move those gates every night and take it out. What and how much the cleaning up. You see the cleanup cost if there was a gate versus how that would change. So what's the benefit of having the gates besides the aesthetics of nicer looking ways of closing the park? So I think is that something that you or the NYPD will be able to provide?
I would have to go back and see what data points we'd have that would fit your request and come back to the community board with them. I'm happy to look. But like if you're talking like personnel hours, those are measured in shifts, not in distinct actions during a shift, for example. And our materials orders aren't down to like a single item. It's like a box of bags, a gallon of cleaner, of disinfectant. So like, I don't know if we have the data to the detail that you're requesting, but I'm happy to go look and come back.
Yeah, I think because we are someone making a trade-off, we're considering what are the pros and cons, what we gain by having more permanent structure and what we will lose from the emotional and other aspects. So I think that's one side of the equation. And then the other question I have is, like, does CB2 have to make a pro forma request? Maybe the question for, so we need a resolution in order for the park department to give us a proposal? They can't just give us a proposal? Is that what do you?
Time giving us a proposal if the community's not interested in receiving it.
Okay, that's helpful. And then my last question is for people who oppose the gates at Toby. Do you go to Thompson Square Park?
Yeah, sometimes.
And do you find that park as exclusive, unfriendly?
I don't find either of them to be exclusive or unfriendly.
So
I don't find either of them to be exclusive or unfriendly.
okay, so Thompson Square Park has a gate, like George said. Most parks around the neighborhood have gates. So I understand people don't like change, but once the gates are there, people are not finding them exclusive. So I think we just want to point that out and for people to sit with that.
But since you engaged me,
Use the mic.
okay. Since you engaged me, is it? Okay. Since you engaged me, Central Park has no gates. That's a very big park, and I used to be chief of operations at Central Park. We had lots of people coming in at night, and we had lots of neighbors who said they wanted gates. It was never seriously considered that there should be gates around Central Park.
But the park does close at night.
It does close, and people come in, and they sleep in the park, and it's not quite the party atmosphere. I don't think, I haven't been there in a long time at night, but it's not the same party atmosphere, but there is a lot of people sleeping there.
Yeah, do you know how, do police go in there and give summons, or did they historically?
Look,
No, in Central Park.
So when I say I used to be chief of operations, that was in the, through the 90s, not recently. But we never had anybody summons anybody for sleeping on a bench.
Okay. Yeah, as I understand it, looking back in the notes from 2016 and earlier, my understanding was that the police patrol the neighborhood, and when they have available time and capacity, they'll go through the park in the middle of the night and see if anyone's in there, and they'll ask them to leave. They don't give summons because they feel that the people always have an explanation. Oh, the barricades have been moved. I didn't realize it was closed. That was my understanding. I wish somebody was here from the police. They're not. The question, so there is some capacity utilization of police officers during the night, unless there's an emergency elsewhere, is my understanding. Anybody on the committee who? William?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Will. I think you have the answers. 2 questions. Okay. What changes in conditions at Washington Square Park have precipitated this idea of the gates coming up again after all these years? So that's one question.
Well, really, I mean, I was contacted with interest in this discussion by the community board, so I would imagine that it's the community members reaching out and it reaching this forum. Yeah.
Will did not approach us.
I think I'd actually like to hear from our former chair, Carter, because he really outlined it as to the aegis of this discussion being over several years. So.
Yeah, so this really.
Turn that on.
I believe it's on, but maybe not in the room. Is that? Okay, yeah, so this really, the conversation started at the beginning of COVID with the changes in the way of what was happening in the park. And from that discussion, it is raised informally at every single meeting by everybody. If you remotely mention closing off the park and why it's not more efficient. Just last night, after another community board meeting, I went around the park because the meeting ended just before midnight, went around the park and photographed every single gate it's a mess. And I think that that's the on the ground condition that are encountered by the people who engage with the park on a regular basis. And while you may not be able to measure it in shift times, what I hear in the feedback from the precinct community council meetings, from any meetings that the board has had with the precinct, from meetings with the Parks Department, from community members, the amount of time that's engaged in dealing with the police barricades. And in 2016, we passed a resolution that Toby suggested with the chains. It was never implemented because the police barricades have been there for a decade and a half. And then there was a whole part that appeared before this committee where chains were bought, and then locks were bought, and it was budgeted for. And I don't know if the Conservancy paid for that or whatever it was, but that's where this conversation keeps coming back from. And so while no agency or individual is going to say, this is what we want, this is a conversation that comes up all the time. And I had came before the chair of the board now and with Rich and just said, why don't we have the conversation? Because there's so much time wasted talking about it. Let's just get it out in the open and take the temperature of where things stand now and have the dialogue and go back to that. And there was a proposal for gates. It was a certain, whatever it was. This is not about that. This is about a discussion and whether we move forward. But it does come up all of the time. I can't, nobody wants to say that, but any problem ends up engaging with, oh, we visited the gates and, we had to go back and we had to send the sector cops back. We had to go back and circle the park because it was open again. And, and so that's really where it comes from. So but just last night, just going around the park and looking at what was there, it was similar to the photographs that you have in front of you. And this was less than an hour from when the park was closed.
Just let me ask for one clarification, Shirley. Can you, just for those who don't know, can you explain what the community council, you referenced the community council.
So the 6th Precinct Community Council is a council that's convened by the NYPD that has its own leadership structure that's elected by people who participate in a certain number of meetings a year. I believe it meets every month. I think it's the last Wednesday, don't take me for that exactly, in all months except in summer and July and August.
And all of these meetings are public meetings.
Yes,
They're not
that's
by
right. They're public
invitation. The
meetings
community
and-
council holds them, but
Right.
they are open meetings at the 6th precinct for everyone to
Right.
go to, and a lot of people come and
it's with
voice
the
their-
elected leadership and with the precinct, and whoever is commanding the precinct engages with the public and answers questions, and they also have a lot of their special teams, community affairs cops, and they're engaged in this. But this communication and the conversation is constant. And so this comes up in a passive way all the time. So
Okay, can I ask my second question? Okay.
Yes.
Somebody referred to that open parks concept, which was developed under Mitch Silver when he was commissioner. And my understanding was that had to do with outside the park, extending the park boundaries. And I wonder, Will, if you could comment on that.
Well, so that was a number of years ago, so you have to bear with me because it's not, exactly fresh in my mind. But yeah, my recollection of Parks Without Borders was was parks in various parts of the city being examined, and if it was possible to lower some of their fences, succinctly. And I know that Mitchell, who is an urban planner by training, used a lot of overlaying formulas and maps to determine where those parks were that were eligible for that program.
I've heard a lot of comment tonight on the interest in having Washington Square Park be an open park for the public. And I mean, I grew up in this neighborhood, so I've loved Washington Square Park for a long time. And I suppose that I don't see the concept of gates as being anathema to that. I mean, anything that we're talking about, first of all, could easily be jumped over. I mean, you can jump over the perimeter of the fence right now if you want to. So I don't see it as being a completely different shift in our attitude towards the park itself and towards closing the park. The park does close. That's a rule by the Parks Department. That is not up for discussion in this meeting. The park does put barriers on the gates. The fact that they do that is not up for discussion at this meeting. My impression is that what we're discussing is what exactly should those gates look like. And to me, that, if I think of it that way, it takes a lot of emotion out of it, and it becomes an aesthetic question. I don't see, closing the park at midnight it's already happening. People sleeping in the park, they're going to do that if they really have to do that anyway. And I guess so to me, reducing it to just a cooler conversation about what should that barrier look like helps me think about it. So that's all.
I just had a question about the history, because someone had mentioned that the park was open 24 hours at one point. How long ago was that? I'm just curious. I don't know the whole history.
I am not aware of the specific time frame when it was open, 24 hours. I'd have to go look that up. Yeah, I don't know if George knows, but.
Turn it on. Do you hear me? Okay. George Vilonicus, resident of Greenwich Village. When I redesigned the park back like around 1999 or so, there was a double pipe rail with 4-foot mesh wiring fencing around the park. And the park did have police barricades at that moment also, closing it at night. So that whole composition was always part of the approach that NYPD always had, even before we had a fence around the park. The reason why we proposed the fence, it made it easier, but there was a barrier around the park. It just, again, that barrier wasn't very attractive either. It was pipe rail with mesh fencing that was 4 feet. So, they always tried their best to kind of close it off because of, especially back in the 80s and 90s, there was a huge problem with, with safety, public safety in Washington Square Park. So that was their approach.
I can volunteer from personal experience. It was not closed in the 60s.
I want to agree with Susanna.
I think you should turn that on, please.
I want to agree with Susanna, as I usually do. I think there certainly has been some support for not having any gates or chains or anything and just having the park open. But I think unless we want to support that as a community, unless we want to ask for that to reverse what we've got, it makes perfect. Oh, sorry. Unless we, as a community board, as a committee, want to endorse that and ask for the police things to be removed and everything to be removed, it makes sense to move forward with this proposal to have. It seems to me that as a community, we've said we want these. We want this park to be closed according to parks procedures. And as Susanna said so eloquently, it's a matter of having more, considering more historic, more attractive choice. And so I would propose that we move forward with that, ask parks to do that. I also have a question. In addition to, in addition to the police presence, do we have any social service activity? Do we have anybody coming in and exactly try? Many people have mentioned the needs and the no alternative place for many of the people in there. But there are many agents that try to.
Elizabeth, I can answer that. The park is very fortunate to be visited by at least 7 different social service providers, 7 days a week. It's one of the things that was developed as we were moving through COVID and its aftermath. It's mainly led by the Department of Homeless Services and their contracted social service providers, which is called the Manhattan Outreach Consortium. I'd encourage anyone here to look them up. They're a wonderful organization. And they, in turn, have different social service providers that visit the park on different days, depending on when they are in contract with the Department of Homeless Services.
Does anyone come at night?
Yes, these providers not only visit at all times of day, but they are not single touch point and go type organizations. They have, just like everybody when they go to the doctor has a medical record, these folks have records. They get to know the people they are engaging with, really understand their needs, and try to place them in, whether it's housing, rehabs, other supportive services, or not, just giving them advice on how to navigate their specific
Thank you.
situation. Yeah.
Of the meeting, and so I want to do that. What?
I just want to say that it is obviously illegal to tell a candidate for public office that they cannot introduce themselves as such.
Okay.
This is a free, open forum that anybody is allowed to speak at.
To be clear, that there's no electioneering that is allowed at a community board meeting. I allowed him to speak, and if you'd like to discuss that later, we can. So I am the chair of the board. I understand you've held that rule, but you cannot, there's no electioneering at our meetings. I'm happy to discuss it with you afterwards or with David afterwards.
We're going to move into business section. Everyone's allowed to stay to hear it, but there are no questions or feedback from the community. So I want to get a sense. Yeah. All right. Let me just say, we do business session. We talk about how we feel as a committee. We see whether or not we have consensus to create a resolution. There are notes from the meeting and a resolution if there is one drafted. Before it goes to any other city agency, it has to go to the full board for a vote. So to give you a scenario, if this committee said they would like to get Parks to weigh in on a proposal for gates, would still go to the full board, which has how many people? 40, 45 people, 54 people. And there's a full board meeting before it would then be sent to Parks. So, okay, let's go to business section. Let me just be clear, there's no public questions or comments during the business session. This is the time to get feedback from everybody about how they feel. Go ahead.
I can't say enough how I agree with what Susanna said. We didn't call the meeting to discuss the question of hours. We called the meeting to discuss the question of gates. And whether you want to call it barricades or chains or gates, it's a method of closing the park. So that for the park has hours and the park closes, then let's look at how we can make it more attractive. It's a historic place, right?
Okay, so
but there's no question about whether it's going to be closed. It will be closed. And I think we really suffered from not having someone from Parks here and someone from the police. So I would be reluctant to, I'm sorry, Parks Department, not the park.
Well, Will is an
No
employee of the Parks
disrespect there.
Department. Right.
But I think we need a little more information before we do a resolution.
Okay, but let me position the discussion as please respond to the question. Should we create a resolution asking the Parks Department to give some proposals and cost estimates on other ways to close the park other than the French barricades?
Well, if we think we've heard enough from the police, then I guess maybe we should, but I feel it's a little premature.
Okay, thank you.
So I would support creating such a resolution. I think right now, as there is nothing for people to respond to, there is a lot more emotions, and then just like we all recognize, all the other parks in the Washington Square area in West Village close, and people don't feel they are that exclusive. So I think we will be able to have a more productive and cooler conversation if we do see something, and then if we see like cost 100 million to, I'm making up the number, to create the gates, then it's probably not a good idea to spend either philanthropy or public money. So I think having something, having options, concrete numbers and designs to respond to, and then also knowing what we will gain from having that, besides the aesthetics, and what we are currently suffering or loss or cost to maintain clean parks, a clean park, I think that will help have something too concrete to respond to. So I will support the resolution earlier than later.
Yeah, I think I agree with Susanna and what Nina said about asking parks to come to us with some things, maybe options, see like what they would consider to even be feasible. Yeah, because right now, the conversation we're having about imaginary fences, basically, it's a bit abstract. So I think, I think having something to respond to in the positive or the negative, if we see it and decide we hate it, and don't want to have anything to do with it, that's fine. But I think having something concrete to respond to would be helpful.
So to be clear, that wouldn't come to this committee, that would actually go to the Landmarks Committee.
So the board.
Which all board
For the
members
board
and
to
the public
respond to.
are welcome to attend and give comment on.
Either way.
This conversation has been swirling around for many years. Right? I think when I first joined these are resolutions I'm looking at from 2014. It's a long time ago. And we've never just taken a stand on this, which seems like a waste of effort. As I said before, the park does close, and we're not debating that. I would also feel comfortable having some proposals that we could respond to. And we can express our interest in maintaining the sense of openness that Washington Square Park stands for, the sense of community engagement that the park has always allowed. We can express our values in that and have that feed a proposal of what gates might be like that would satisfy that. That's it.
Yeah, I'll just use both. So I hate to be sort of an Elena Kagan about this, but I'm definitely opposed to all of it. I don't think we should have any resolution that we should make a proposal to the parks. I think this is all window dressing. I think the vast majority of the issues that were addressed tonight are things that are resolved by better investments in the rest of the community, whether like things like smoking are still illegal in every single park. Homeless people, the solution to homelessness is homes. The vast majority of the things that were talked about here tonight are cleanliness requires cleanup crews. It does not require a gate. The concept that if we lock up a park, all of these problems will just go away is completely lost on me, because we currently have these gates that are not going to solve any of these problems. Smoking is illegal in every park. Whatever you're smoking, it's illegal.
If you're going to speak, please use the microphone.
Smoking of any kind is illegal in all parks.
So I think I'm kind of coming out a little bit where Frederica was. I'm not sure I feel that I'm ready to do anything yet. I mean, I would have loved to hear a bit more from NYPD. They weren't here tonight. We heard from a lot of great people with really interesting points, and I'm glad a lot of people showed up. But someone did mention that this is a permanent change, and I would like to this is going to affect thousands and thousands of people, if not more. And so it would be interesting. I think maybe hearing from NYPD, digesting it a bit more would probably be prudent in my view. Then again, this is my second meeting on this committee, so maybe that's a bit of a personal problem, but that's kind of where I'm coming out right now.
So to be clear, it's not, they usually don't appear to give us their opinions at our meetings, so it may be it may be a moot point. But could someone silence their phone? Also, Also, just listening to the comments, I would say that to learn more about what that could be, this is to then further that discussion would be to come out of this committee to then further that discussion about what it could be and some of these other data points and whatnot.
No, I think, yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's hard for me to say I'm in favor of a resolution without having a concept of exactly what it looks like. So maybe it would depend a bit on what that wording is. And it's tough for me to say right now without seeing like an outline.
Yeah, I really can't reach a conclusion because I really don't feel we've had enough of the input. Again, what I asked about before was what were the conditions that precipitated this consideration? And I'm not so sure that I've gotten the answer. So I would really like to have more discussion. If it was NYPD that had suggested this, then we should have them here to discuss this. If it was the board, I guess, where did we get that concept from? Did we get lots of input? You said there was a lot of input, Carter.
Could you get a microphone? Yeah, I think Carter's outlined. This is, again, I've heard it.
I think you just need to go to the regular meetings that occur where these conversations.
Can you turn the microphone on?
I believe it's on, just not in the room.
It works when you're talking to it.
Okay, so it comes up regularly, and the agencies, nobody who speaks for them can speak for the agency, which is why you won't hear the answer that you're looking for. But if you go talk to them about a specific problem, you will hear that brought up, and then they will turn around and say, why don't you bring it up? And that's what we're doing, and having the conversation. And I think that's
we haven't brought up problems.
Well, if you go to any of the 6 precinct community council meetings or any of the, even in this committee, over the years, the problems, and I just want to back up to something that Rich had said, is that I think that what we're asking for is a range of proposals from the Parks Department, not a singular proposal.
That's right.
And I think that is something that we had talked about, including with Susanna. There's many different ideas that might fit budgetary, needs, past ideas. Right. There's a whole range of how that can be done, but we have a permanent situation, and that's locked up police barricades. That's right. It is a permanent situation. It extends people's lifetimes of kids growing up and using the park. It's affecting generations. It already has. So, if that's what we want to have is always, thrown around police barricades that are locked up at night and thrown around on the sides, that's what it is. But that's the existing condition. And I think that goes back to the point of it's already locked up at night. So is there a better way to do that? And Toby was chair of the board in 2016 when we passed a resolution putting chains across the board. And Rich, you were chair of the committee at that time, and that was brought up. That's an option. Let's hear that option.
It's been 10
presented
years.
back. Some alternatives, and I think people are on the fence. Maybe that's a good way to weigh different ways that this might happen. I just don't think that the existing condition is that great.
Yeah, and I think if you say that is that's an option that could be considered in the future. One of the options should be the barricades, but I think we need to consider the fact that if we do nothing, that's what we're going to have, is the barricades.
So I'll say that I'm starting from a baseline that I think Washington Square Park is unique enough in its location and history that it should be 24/7 with better lighting and patrolling, and the ways we need to address the problems are similar to what Chris brought up. I think the current barriers are extremely ugly, and but I also don't care all that much about the aesthetics of gates or no gates. I just prefer easy access to our parks. And so the fact that we seem to be not coming into this, more stumbling around it, I would want to know clear and compelling evidence from either Parks or Will or the NYPD on maintenance money, on crime, on other issues that are presented to us at one of our hearings in order to push this conversation forward. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm not compelled enough that this is a problem that we need to be solving right now.
I have a question. If we don't decide tonight that we're going to write a resolution, I guess my question is, then what happens? I mean, it would be nice not to have another 10 years where this swirls around in the ether. So would we maybe decide that in order to be able to have a resolution, we hear from specific people and we ask them to come and present to us? I just wonder what the next step would be, if not resolution.
Yeah, I think the next step would be to have a meeting where we, by those who are more adamant about it, who want to come and give more specific data, including elected officials, who, by the way, were not here and never want to weigh in on this. And they should. We had a potential elected official who, this is a joke. All right.
We can just move away from that, please.
Come on, I was just teasing.
Rich, I want to speak to that, is that the way this generally works, in my experience, is from my past working here, is the elected officials say, we want to hear from the board first. And so when we're going to everybody else to ask them, it actually starts here. And I think there's enough interest to hear more, but without proposals, which is what everybody's talking about, there's nothing to weigh. And that's what leaves the stalemate, because without any options, as simple as a standing board position of chains. You know, we already have a position 10 years ago, but maybe if that works instead of the gates, that's still better. So that's an option to consider, and that's why I think a broader resolution that encourages a range of presentation is not a stalemate, and that allows for the public to weigh in a better fashion with some ideas for improvement.
Thanks. I agree with what you're saying, Carter. The only resolution I'd be interested in participating in is one that talked about replacing barricades with gates, because closing the park is not an option. It's the type of closure, and call it what you will.
So I don't think this meeting was broadcast enough, I'm a senior, and I went to the senior center today, and the musicians were there, the ones that used to play in the park when we could play in the park, when there wasn't electronic music that overshadowed our guitars, that are not electronic, whatever they're called, acoustic. And so they didn't know, no one knew anything about this meeting, not one person. So I passed out that. And then I think they couldn't really find this building, because I had a hard time myself. And I know, I don't come. Sorry, I Zoom. But also, the Conservancy sent out an invitation to this meeting at 3:30 this afternoon, Wednesday. I mean, that should have been sent out a few days before. Anyway, and also, I would like to see some of the problems addressed. I don't know how much money's needed extra, but a lot of the seniors, I'm speaking for seniors because we're afraid to enter that park because of skateboarders. And I have to climb up 3 flights of stairs, and if I get hit, and I have just that close been almost hit, and several of my friends have been hit, I'm homeless because I won't be able to walk up 3 flights of stairs. So anyway, that's my problem.
If I could hop in, kind of thinking of what Carter said and what Frederica was saying of putting on the floor about a resolution about in favor of gates, right, Frederica? Or replacing the barricades with gates. I think what I'm getting a sense of is that it is that a resolution like that is what moves the conversation forward, to have those exploratory questions answered, because there is something for then the electeds to respond to, for the Parks Department to respond to. That's kind of the sense I'm getting. Oh, here.
I had said, should we ask Parks, should our resolution say, we would like Parks to provide proposals for a different way of showing that the park is closed? And yeah.
I mean, I think it's, I mean, but I mean, I don't think there's a question about replacing the barricades,
Yeah.
right?
So-
Can we get a microphone?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to use the term gates because we've got.
Yeah, I think,
different
I like
proposals.
that, the terminology,
Yeah.
replace the barricades with gates.
But we've got proposals that say a chain, right? So I'm other options other than barricades. There was a hand down here I saw.
Well, I think I was getting to the same point as you. I think I would want to see something that's not only gates, but also includes an option like a chain, because that apparently is a standing board position. And I think I've heard people say tonight that certain people have argued that there should not be a full-time gate. And so I'd want to at least include both of those options. Chain, which would be a lighter touch effectively from what we have now, and then the gate as well, so we can hear what the public thinks on both of those options.
Rich?
But the board position is against gates, not against a chain. Is that correct? No.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Just a summary of what the board position is that we're.
The board never had a position on the gates. It was removed by the elected
Thank you.
officials.
Okay, thank you.
As part of a negotiation. So there is no, but what happened is that I think that we had a resolution that the committee had discussed. This was, in 2016, some time ago, about again, replacing, the police barricades with something else. And I think that was, a symbolic, the park is closed. But, maybe the way to ask the park department is what would serve their needs as a replacement for the French barricades and some options that would meet their needs.
Perfect.
Because I think that hits sort of some of the issues in a better way, right, than the barricades. Or the other option at the end is also leave it alone. That can also be presented back to this committee. It does not need to go to the Landmarks Committee first.
You're right.
It can come back here for public input on the type of closure, and then it can proceed into the final design phase. And keep in mind that there are existing plans. So
That's what's
providing even those plans as one of the options,
You're exactly
the cost would, even if it's not finalized anymore or whatever, but would not be prohibitive because they
Not designing,
exist.
there won't be a design, but the construction.
No,
mechanism.
No, right, but I'm just saying though that even to produce it, it already exists. So the cost overhead is not extreme as a starting point.
But one of our problems, I think, is just semantics, right? We have gates, we have barricades, we have closures, we have chains. Certain things are more appropriate in certain parts of the park, right? Smaller openings are better served by a gate, and maybe around the area of the arch, a chain is more appropriate. But any reso we do has to go through a thorough description of the difference between a barricade, a gate, a chain, a closing.
I like that, and I get this now. Like, it's the idea that I really like what Carter said about the mechanism for what it could be would come back to this committee before a formal proposal would be presented. But the type of closure would then come to this committee with hopefully additional information that's been brought up as wanting more, so.
He's right. I mean, we don't, but correct me if I'm wrong, we don't need a resolution for that. We could just say, we could have another meeting, ask Parks to come with ideas. The specific resolution was for specific proposals that we want considered.
But I think it would allow it for the full board to also to guide that direction as well.
If you open it up to the full board, you're going to reopen the question of whether or not there are going to be hours, whether the park should be open all night, and whether that is the we saw it here tonight. We saw it here on this committee. We cut it off and say, we just want to hear about a way of closing the park, because if we go to full board with that, there are going to be all the same questions you heard tonight.
But
I want to interject. It's Coral. I've had my hand up for a little bit. So I really appreciated the public comment that was made, and I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Second.
Yeah, Coral, wait 1 second. I wanted to Valerie respond to that?
I think that I actually don't think, I think that I actually think it's important to get that feedback now and make this an iterative process. So that way it's transparent and then it's a response to what we heard tonight, that we're moving something forward and we're not going to get stuck in committee. And it'll also be a bigger signal to the electeds earlier in the process. Otherwise.
But Valerie, we don't have a proposal, we don't have a resolution to bring to the board.
So I just want to say there's something here that's a key point, is that we're asking the Parks Department to expend some resources. And in order to do that, I think that we need a formal way to do that. And what I was saying about plans that exist, that doesn't require an extensive expenditure, but this would require whatever the in-house teams at the Parks Department to convene some internal discussions, to bring together people. There would be some expending some money to come up with some of the ideas and drawing enough rough plans to just begin a conversation. And I think it's inappropriate to ask for that in an informal manner.
Right.
Because they're actually expending money.
Yeah,
and so I think that that's the response we always hear. Hey, if you want us to engage, you have to ask us. We just engaged with some of the city agencies the other way and said, hey, you sent us something, you got to send us something back in writing if we're asking
So help me
for that.
summarize that into how do you propose, what would you propose the resolution to say?
That there's been some interest in some other manners in which to close the park. What would be some options that would work for the park to not use the police barricades? What is a range of proposals that would work for the Parks Department?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then
Right, and I think the Parks Department employees, as we heard, they're the ones who were charged with this. So they've got the ideas. These guys are out here every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and that's what I was sharing before.
Okay.
They have plenty of ideas.
Okay.
We have to ask them for some of their ideas on how to execute a plan, not necessarily whether they think the park should be closed. That's not the question before us, right? It's a better way to
we
do
should
it.
make
Okay,
it clear.
no. I'm going to jump in because I appreciate that Carter just said that, but I was waiting.
Doors are not in
And-
question. And the police
Yeah.
can provide
What?
on to what the Parks
Yep. Okay.
Department comes up with.
Right, Coral, would you like to speak
Thank you.
now?
I appreciate that, Rich. So I agree with Carter on this, but I think that in general, the speaker that spoke from the public was very on point in the opportunity cost. So if you look at the average pay per like a new NYPD officer per hour, $33 per hour. Now, if you have 5 years, it's $45 per hour. Let's say there's 20 staffing moving those, which is probably more than that. It's $10,000 if you do 12 hours. So like how much money are we spending in moving these barricades versus just having some nice like historic gate? There should be a cost benefit analysis of how silly this is that we're even spending all this time on this discussion when we could just have a nice gate and it would cost a fraction of what we're spending and wasting resources when NYPD should be deployed in other ways rather than moving a physical barricade. And I think I agree with the lucidity of having a very clear discussion about that, but I think that should be our option. And we should say, we have a firm resolution saying we would like to hear what this is costing our community and what is the best alternative from your proposal as NYPD and Parks to resolve this. And then we assess that one proposal, not like we have like 20 that we keep discussing. That's my contribution.
So I think the question for the committee is whether or not the committee wants to, based on the public testimony and what we've heard in this discussion, is whether or not we want to ask Parks to provide other options to the barricades. That sounds to me like that's what's on the table here.
In mind, I asked the committee again, how do you feel about, we've refined the question a bit. How do you feel about it? Do you change your position? I've written down your positions. We should write a proposal like that and you would support it?
Yeah, I think we should write a proposal, and I also think that our resolution should also affirm a lot of the values of openness and public use that were expressed tonight, and that we all.
That's great. You're volunteering to write it. That's one. Yeah. Good on you.
I would support it if one of the proposed options is like a chain or other less intrusive area. And also, I would, again, like to request that we ask for data on if people are going to push for more intrusive gates or other barriers to entry, what do they expect the outcome to the park to be in terms of maintenance or other compelling reasons why someone would argue for that?
I hear you. Chris, I'm interested in Chris's, would that change your opinion?
I guess I would say at best, I'm leaning towards if we're doing the bare minimum of not spending more than just a chain, then sure, maybe that's interesting. But it's still, to me, a moot point. Like every single one of these things does not get solved by a chain or a gate or a barricade or a facade. These are all window dressing, first and foremost. And then if we're gonna like nickel and dime the NYPD, then we have to actually talk about how the northwest corner was actually only ever cleaned up by doing criminal investigations, not closing a gate. So they all just feel like moot points. But sure, if we're going to do a gate, or rather a chain, then that would be the most cost-effective proposal for me personally.
But Chris, I'm happy to put all that in the whereas. I mean,
yeah. I guess that's our best middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to document that position and that opinion, and
only Chris likes chains.
That's how I read it. No, I'd say
I think I have chains on my shirt. Sure.
No. There are other chain advocates, but
great.
I'm saying that whereas the city, all the things you said about this isn't going to stop homelessness and that
cigarette smoking.
Cigarette smoking. Right.
Or jazz.
So I mean, where I come out is it seems like there's probably a minority of people that think the current barriers forever is just the way to go. What I heard tonight was some people wanted gates, some people clearly do not want gates and want something less, in your face, like a chain. I think what makes sense is what we're kind of converging on, which is let's ask for a range of options. I just would want to make sure that we're not asking only for gate options. And then the other point that I made earlier, which was repeated by others, was I would like to hear from more people in the public. And so this would then give us an opportunity to actually put something out there that I suspect more people would then respond to.
I also invite the committee to get curious about open data. A lot of these questions that have been asked too are available in open data sets as well.
So I agree with the three gentlemen in the end, and I'm an idealist, and I would really love for no gates at all. That's how I am.
So that could be requesting the proposal, right? It's an option.
In the proposal, yeah. And I just want to say, you were talking about the fence being climbable, Susanna. I've never seen anybody try to climb those fences.
I'm not saying I'm just saying that it's not actually a physical.
It is a physical barrier. I've never seen. I feel sorry for the person who tries it. Anyway, all right, that's it.
But I just want to make sure I understand when we say what you said. I don't think we are asking the park if there will be no closure. That's not an option.
Right. That also means like we're not asking them to remove the French barricades and not have anything there, number one. And we're also not debating on hours, number two.
I come from almost heaven, West Virginia, and on our Capitol it says mountaineers are always free.
The next time we talk about gates closing, I'd like to make sure we talk about enforcement, because what I see now is we have hours, we have signs, we have barricades, and what I'm hearing is there are a lot of people in the park at night, and so many that there's a huge amount of trash in the morning. So it seems this part isn't working, and it's all over New York. A lot of it's about the motor scooters on the sidewalk and the you know, there's a lot that's important about enforcement.
So to be clear, the enforcement conversation really takes place at the 6th precinct meeting, which we'll also attend, and NYPD convenes that conversation there. That's really where the enforcement conversation takes place.
All right, so. No, I don't want to adjourn, I just want to make sure. It sounds like we say, well, we haven't written the resolution, but we haven't written it. We will write it, and I don't want people to vote
Well, we
till
do
they've
need
read
to,
it.
well, you do need a vote in order for it to
Well,
be produced.
Yeah, okay, let's take a vote on, based
Vote
on.
over email.
What is, based on the discussion here, which will be in the transcript so that I can make sure we capture it accurately, or ChatGPT can. We're proposing to write a resolution requesting that the Parks Department spend some time and perhaps some incur some costs to give the community proposals for alternatives to the French barricades. We will be specific not to say that gates are the only option. We will put in whereases around the fact that locking the park is not going to cure all the issues that are there. What else did we say? Yeah, that's why, you're right. The concept of an open, welcoming place is important. If we do that, if we write that, assuming we write that, and it's not your official vote, do you agree that we should create that? Right.
Can't present something to the full board if
No.
you haven't voted on it.
No, we
here.
will vote.
Okay.
We will vote. I'm just saying, do I have agreement from people to prepare that resolution? Which I will then walk around, and make sure, not by email. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you all for attending. All right. We will produce a resolution and we'll find a way for all of us to vote. No, we're not.
We can vote on the sense of the resolution.
That's all, yeah, that's what we've done. Yeah, all right,
Right?
go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, all
So-
right.
So I move that we vote to
Okay.
produce the resolution.
Yes, please, all right,
Right?
yeah. All in favor of producing the resolution? Anybody that's against it?
Absolutely.
Okay, Coral says yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks for attending. Oh, and thanks, I'm sorry, Mark.
Motion to
please.
adjourn.
Yeah, motion, let me just thank NYU one more time and Arlene for all the work they did and help me set up, put up the chairs. Thank you.
Yeah, they were stars. All right, we're out.